Welcome back everyone for a new collections video. This time we're looking at the PlayStation Vita. First up is the only loose game I actually have physically. And that is Uncharted Golden Abyss, which is a true classic. Next up, my only Japanese, well, one of only two Japanese imports I have. First up is Dead or Alive Extreme 3, known as Venus Edition. Of course, it's all in Japanese, as this game never got a localization thanks to certain outside reasons. So if you wanted this game, you had to import from Japan, unfortunately. Why did I pick up the game? Easy. Because the actual casino games in this are actually a lot of fun, like blackjack and stuff. But with that said, next up, on the more family-friendly side of things, we have LEGO Lord of the Rings. Which is genuinely probably one of the LEGO games I tend to prefer. And again, my bias towards Lord of the Rings is probably a good reason why. Still a great outing, I think, of the LEGO series. Also, if you like techno music and you like puzzle type games like Tetris, well, look no farther. This is arguably a hidden gem in the genre. And seriously, if you like good like electronica and stuff, you'll actually enjoy this quite a bit. And this is arguably one of the most affordable games for the Vita. Next, we have the Day 1 edition of World of Final Fantasy. Though I never actually opened this, it remains factory sealed. Because I played the version I have for the Xbox One. Still a great game, and the fact it does have head nods to many different eras of Final Fantasy is pretty cool. Also a great collection with the Sly Cooper collection. Now, unfortunately, only two of the three games are physically on the cartridge. The third game is a digital download code, which unfortunately when I bought this, the digital download code had already expired, and you cannot buy Sly 3 separately, so the cheapest route to go was just to get it physical on regular home console, unfortunately. Still is a great addition to the collection, the fact at least you still get Sly Cooper 1 and 2, which are solid games. Also a somewhat overlooked, sort of a hidden gem in my opinion, from Sega, mostly because I love the head nods to Sega's past history and stuff in the backgrounds of some of the stages. As in one of the stages, you actually see Sega Dreamcast in the background. In another stage, you see like a Saturn. So I love those little head nods to the past. Many characters from many different franchises, like you have a character from Virtual Fighter, as well as like other series, and of course, two of the main characters, obviously, being from Sword Art Online. But this is actually a pretty solid overall 2D fighter, but if you're curious about playing it, I recommend PS3 version as it is cheaper nowadays. Next up, probably my personal favorite HD thing that I have. As a big fan of Final Fantasy X, this is awesome. Now, of course, you only get physical on cartridge. This you have to download separately 10.2, and it'll take up about 4 gigabytes of memory. So, know that. So, it is great, and honestly, I've played multiple times Final Fantasy X because it is awesome getting to play Final Fantasy X on the go on the Vita. It's just a blast. Love it. And yes, I actually did download 10 too. I think it's a somewhat underrated game in the franchise because the actual mechanics are quite fun. Next, we have my personal favorite, of course, out of all the games on the Vita, with Gravity Rush. It was Gravity Days in Japan. But this was the whole reason I ever bought a Vita in the first place. This was the sole reason I picked up a Vita, was just to play Gravity Rush. Next up, I think a pretty solid overall port with Injustice Gods Among Us Ultimate Edition, which includes all the extra content, which is great. It is a pretty solid overall, I think, port to handheld from home console personally. Next up, we have, in my opinion, the criminally underrated PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. Which I've said before, I love this. Plus, it is cool you get to play with people like Parappa the Rapper, Hey Haji, you have Jack and Daxter, even Dante from DMC Devil May Cry, as well as Kratos, Ratchet, and others, as well as Sly Cooper, and also, of course, Nathan Drake. Next up, another solid, I think, overall handheld port with Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Arguably, it's because I'm very biased for my love of this game. But if you get a chance, I will say it is actually placed perfectly, honestly, on handheld, making it, to me, the default, probably best fighting game, in my opinion, on the Vita. Next up, if you're looking for a good solid first-person shooter experience on the console, I recommend highly Unit 13, as is by far probably the most affordable FPS on the console, and is actually a solid, great experience overall. For me, it's easily probably in the top 3 best first-person shooters on here. Also, another pretty solid overall port with Street Fighter Cross Tekken. Plays great, plus it has special exclusive DLC characters only in this version of the game. And it's still a thrill to play off and on to this day. Also, a game I haven't played too much, I need to get around to playing, trying some more in the series. Of course, next we have Sword Art Online Lost Song, which overall is an okay game. Also, if you like Monster Hunter type of games, this is a great game I personally highly recommend. Developed by Koei Tecmo. This actually played a pretty heavy influence on games like Neo. But if you're looking for a solid overall great giant monster fighting game, this is pretty much about the best. Next is the game that was bundled with my white Vita when I got it back years ago, with Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation. And I feel this game is somewhat underappreciated. For it being a handheld game from the start, it actually looks pretty good overall, and I like they tried something unique and different with the game. And the fact this was, of course, the first game that actually revolved around a female protagonist, which I actually thought was pretty cool. And it took place in like early New Orleans as well. Next up, we have probably the one of the others of the top three, in my opinion, best shooter experiences, and that being Borderlands 2. This is a great overall experience on handheld. Actually, surprisingly, now I'll be honest, this was actually how I played the game the first time, was actually on here, not on home consoles. So this was my first experience actually Borderlands 2. And yeah, as you see down there, Iron Galaxy helped develop the game, which of course you may also know for being involved in the reboot Killer Instinct. Also, another one of arguably the best fighting games ports, surprisingly really still looks great, with that being Dead or Alive 5 Plus. Definitely, surprisingly, it actually translated pretty well. It still plays just as good as the regular console version of the game. And Dead or Alive, for the most part, has always been a series that I have always had a very soft spot for. Next, we have arguably, in my opinion, the best shooting game on the Vita, with Killzone Mercenary, which is also my personal favorite Killzone game. Though I've only played one of the original 3 Killzone games along with Shadowfall. But believe it or not, you could still occasionally find people still playing this online to this day. I'm not joking. Last time I was on, there was probably about 30 people online actually playing this game on Vita's online in, like, at the time, 2022, which is kind of crazy. Still a great game. Another overall solid port with Mortal Kombat 2011. Of course, there you see where they introduced new special additional characters like Freddy Krueger, Rain, and others. And of course, exclusively the PlayStation version, Kratos. And yeah, you could even use the touchpad to perform fatalities, which is pretty cool actually, in my opinion. It's an interesting way to do fatalities in the game, but arguably is actually my default way of performing them. Next up, we have arguably one of the hardest games, difficulty-wise, with... This is more of like a classic tactical RPG type game. Just know this game is hard, is tooth and nails hard, like we're talking Dark Souls level difficulty, if not even harder. If you think I'm joking, I'm not. Give the game a shot for yourself and see if I'm lying when I say I put this in probably the top 10 hardest games of all time I've played. Next up, one of my personal favorite, on the higher difficulty side of games, but I still love it for the over-the-top craziness and the fact I love Ryu Hayabusa being my favorite ninja. And even a special other additional female characters from the OA series, of course. Like a certain shrine maiden, as you see there, with also one of my personal all-time favorites, Ione. But I love this game. Easily my favorite of the Ninja Gaiden series. Next up is a game that I, of course, occasionally will defend, and that is Silent Hill Book of Memories. It's a game, as I've said, not a great Silent Hill game, but it is actually a pretty solid dungeon crawler. So if you like dungeon crawler games, not bad, but I would not pay the price that this is starting to go for nowadays. Just know that. Last of the standard games is Soul Sacrifice. I would say it's up there with the other game I showed as the best giant monster fighting games to play. This game arguably is considered one of the top best reasons to have Vita is for Soul Sacrifice. And I'm not going to argue with that. Okay, we have 4 special things to show. First, you hear the music in the background playing right now from this game, and that is Bad Apple Wars. This is the Day 1 edition, which is starting to go up. If you like good, like, anime style RPGs, if you like games that play, like, similar to Atlas games and stuff like that, you actually may enjoy this game. It's actually a pretty solid overall. I think criminally underrated hidden gem RPG. But I feel that way about quite a few Vita games I think are hidden gems, just like the Vita itself is. Next up is a pretty cool pickup I got a while back. I imported from Japan, and that being Skullgirl's Second Encore, Skull Heart Box. Sadly, the original slip thing was not with it, but it includes like a small little art book, it includes the original soundtrack, and then the actual game itself. It is definitely a pretty cool thing to actually in the collection, as I'm a big fan of Skullgirls. Second to last, pretty cool. I got this day one when it originally came out. It includes like a pretty hefty size art book, original soundtrack, along with special exclusive DLC, and plus, of course, the full original game. This was my introduction to this franchise as a whole. But yeah, as you see, this is what is included in it. It's pretty fun. If you enjoy like games like Dynasty Warriors, you would really enjoy this series. It's one of my personal favorite hack and slash type of games of all time. Even if it wasn't like full of wild food characters, I still love it. The non-stop crazy over the top action and everything makes it worth having in my opinion. Last but not least, a solid RPG series. I think it's somewhat underrated with Fate. This is a pretty cool, awesome game, and I love this version. It's quite large, actually. And that's what you get told. You get a pretty nice, hefty, like, hardback cover art book, as well as, like, the regular game itself. Plus, you get what kind of reminds me of, like, tarot cards. And you get, like, a little material wall scroll, which is cool. But yeah, this is what the cards look like. Then there's the actual game itself. But that's it for my PlayStation Vita collection. So leave a comment below. Well, tell me what are some of your personal favorite Vita games. With that said, I'll see y'all next time. Same YouTube time, same YouTube channel, and hopefully enjoyed the jazzy music in the background.